And we're live. Welcome to Music Matters with Jason Tramm. And thank you so much for joining us for our unique podcast community. Here on Music Matters, we explore the triumphs and challenges of the performing arts world as seen through the eyes of distinguished colleagues. Thank you so much for helping us grow. We hit 1,740 subscribers today, and we grow every day thanks to you. Please remember to subscribe on YouTube and smash that bell icon for the most up-to-date information on our upcoming guests and topics. We explore the genres from classical music all the way to contemporary R&B, you name it, here it's on Music Matters. And I love to bring in the artists and discuss their work. It's really exciting, and thank you so much for joining us. We have a wonderful, wonderful guest today. We have Steve Wallace, who is an acclaimed composer, a vocalist, and a vocalist in many styles. I know I've worked with him in the opera realm. He's a wonderful leading tenor, but he also works in a lot of different, as we're going to learn on the show, he works in a lot of other different realms as well. He is most recently written in the opera, R&B opera, Hal King. So welcome, Steve Wallace.
Hey, everybody. How's it going?
It's great to have you here. How have you been these days?
I've been doing well. I've been doing really well. Staying busy, planning for the future, spending things that have been kind of out there, and just continue to spread the word, about Hal King, about, the works that I'm doing,
We're going to jump into Hal King pretty soon, but
Yeah.
tell us about your artistic journey. Did you always know you wanted to be an artist?
Yeah, in some facet, I mean, since very early, because I started drawing when I was really, really young. And I used to draw so much that people would forget I was in the room. So I would be like drawing and like, wait, is Steven still here? It's like, oh, there he is. He's drawing something.
So
Um,
you've always been creating. You've been a creator.
yeah, for a long time. And then I started singing. I sang my first solo in choir at church when I was like 4, and then I was like I said, I was drawing and stuff too. Actually, thought I was going more in the direction of visual art, and
Wow.
then I realized that my visual art interest was pretty narrow when I started checking out art schools and stuff, and they went like, oh, pottery and painting, and I was like, nah, I just want to draw like comic books, you know what I mean? Um, but with music, my interest was so varied. I was like, okay, I want to learn everything: jazz, hip hop, classical, and blues, whatever. I want to know everything I possibly could. So that's why I decided to, you know, focus a major in music in college.
Did you come from a musical family?
Um, yeah, indirectly, but not directly. So when you go through, like when I was coming up in my family, I'm the youngest of three. Um, there wasn't a lot of music in my house played, but my dad would sing from time to time, and every now and then he'd put on something while we're driving on a road trip or something. But like in the house, it wasn't like, a lot of people who grew up in musical families, like people would sit around and like sing together and like harmonize. And that didn't happen a lot. But our parents put us in choir, things like that. They knew the value of it, had us taking piano lessons and things like that. Um, so that was happening. Um, but it wasn't like, but funny thing is that like all my dad's brothers and him all sang, and all had like different voices. It was 5 of them, and they would sing harmony together at like my grandmother's birthday or something. They would sing happy birthday, and it'd be like little conversations like, okay, you singing that first tenor, I'm singing the baritone, blah blah blah, and they would just bust out like this 5 part harmony, which is really dope. And then
Love
my
it.
aunt, their sister, she had a master's in music and was a pianist and organist. Um, so it was there, but like in my particular household, my dad was a track coach, and when he would come home from coaching track, he was tired. He would go lay on the couch, watch some TV, and go to sleep. And then my mom was working for the state, or part of the time she was at home with us. So there wasn't a lot, but there were like maybe before I was born. I don't know. My sister might be on it. She could probably attest to that a little more, but yeah,
That's great.
yeah,
Well, it's great to have that music around you. And we've had 230 conversations on this show, and everyone's so different. They go from like parents were professional artists to people
yeah,
whose parents were maybe supportive, but certainly weren't professional artists. I come from a similar. I'm a conductor, and my dad worked at a power plant. He worked at Con Ed in New York City, and my mom
mm,
was a homemaker and who
yeah,
played the piano in Sunday school, but not at a high level. But
right,
their love of music was certainly given to me, and they supported all the crazy
yeah.
things I've been through.
Oh yeah, yeah. Definitely my mom. My dad. I was just talking to him the other day. Like he was like, I just really grateful that your mom like would take you to. I went to the Merritt School of Music in Chicago, from the age of like 8 until 18, nine until
Wow.
18, and and she would just drive me, and I was in the tuition free program on the weekends, and so I went every Saturday, like all day, like learning all types of stuff, music theory and ear training and stuff. And so they were super super supportive of me, and even I was like super scared when I realized I wanted to major in music, and I had been saying I was going to be a graphic artist for a long time, and that seemed more like the monetary secure route. And then when I realized that music was the thing that I wanted to focus on studying, I was really scared. But when I told them, they were super supportive of me, and they were like, "Yeah, go for it." So yeah, they definitely have been supportive of me.
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
Did you start composing when you were young, or is that something that's been a more recent development?
So I started at the Merritt School of Music actually on accident. And there's levels to this. So I I was 12 and I was cast. They used to do these student written operas at Merritt, and I was cast twice. I had a leading role in it, like before my voice changed, and this voice soprano. And the first time I did it, I just sang, and then next time I did it, they had this. It was like a couple weeks before the premiere, and there was a section of the finale that I was supposed to sing that was not written yet, and so the teacher, Miss Lisa Richter, she told me, she was like, Stephen, your part's not written yet. Go in that room and write it. And I said, I was maybe 12, 13 or something like that. I think I was 12. And I was like, okay. And I went in there, but everybody was writing at Merritt. It was like we had ear training and stuff. I was like, I guess I can do this. And I had tried, like, I had a teacher that said, come back with melodies before. So I just tried something out, showed it to her, and she's like, oh, this is actually pretty good. Let's use it.
What a
And so that,
wonderful environment. Wow.
yeah, yeah. And that's how that started. And then in high school, I had a singing group, like a Boys to Men type singing group, and the guys just got together and were like, "Hey, everybody, just write a song and let's bring it back and see who has the best song." And so that was when I was 15, and then from there, I was like, I just got really into the idea of writing songs, and by the time I graduated high school, I'd written about 100 songs, and 50 of
Wow.
them were bad. Another 30 probably sounded like somebody else, but I had written like 100 songs. So but when I got to college and I started being exposed to more classical music, and more specifically in the operatic context, which there's a whole story to that, like how I got involved with that too. But I heard some operas, and then one day I saw Traviata, and it just clicked for me. I said, this is just a bunch of songs tied together with a story, and I've written 100 songs. So why not write a bunch of songs and create a story? And then I've written the opera. And this was when I was like 19. So I started writing my first opera when I was 19, and I never really took composition classes or anything. It was just kind of like on my own. And then I started finding composition professors while I was studying voice. And I was like, hey, can I sit with you for a little while? Hey, look at this. What do you think? So that's kind of how it started.
It's great. And as you were singing and performing, you're also developing your craft as a composer and learning from the composers you're working with.
Yeah,
Nothing like studying, studying the greats, so looking at the Verdis, the Puccinis in the operatic realm, because, boy, they just could capture those moments. And, with opera, to me, it's always about universal human stories.
sure, definitely. Yeah, 100%. And the only other thing that reminds me, because I never studied orchestration officially, like I bought a book or whatever and read it, but I never really took a class on it. But I did, because I was often sit in my opera rehearsals with the full score, and I would sit there and like looking like what Puccini was doing, what Verdi was doing, and Bizet, and I was just like, oh, I was just fascinated. Okay, he doubled that, and he didn't do this here, and like what they were doing. So much so that, like, I think the first time I did Bohème, I missed an entrance at the Sitzprobe because my face was in the orchestra score. Like,
It's a fantastic score, man. Boy,
uh,
honestly, that's the best way to learn orchestration. I was told that by multiple, as developing as a conductor, I, would always be in front of a score, and you learn how composers orchestrate, how Beethoven, Mozart orchestrate, how they create certain colors, and how they use instruments, and that's
right.
the lesson in itself, is just being in front of those scores, listening, reviewing, learning, and then adapting.
Yeah, exactly, totally.
Wow. What was your first? So you said you first started writing your first opera at 19.
Yeah.
Has that opera been completed? Have you actually staged it?
Not well. I started at 19. I finished it when I was 20, and then I did another. I edited it to another iteration at 21. So it is done. It was performed. It was never performed. But the aria, the soprano aria, and a duet and a scene were performed when I went to opera in the Ozarks in 2012 when I auditioned um, Thomas Cockrell, and he heard me and he had read my I guess it was in my bio that I had composed and stuff like that or something. I don't know where it was, but he says, "Oh, I read that you write music and you're an R&B singer and stuff." And it was the first time someone asked me to sing an R&B song in an opera audition,
I love it.
which was fascinating for him. I was like thrown off, like what? He's like, "Yeah, please." It's like we want to like develop the entire artist. We're interested in everything you're doing. I'm like, okay, cool. So I did that, and then they were really interested in you know, the opera that I had written at the time, which was just my first opera. And so they performed two of my scenes from the opera in their scenes program.
What was it like to see your work on the stage for the first time? To see it come together with professional artists?
Uh, well, um, that may have not been the first time I've seen it with that was my opera. I had written some art songs and stuff, and I wrote a symphony too. But that with that one, it was interesting because it was quite some time since I had written it, and then to be able to see people's adaptation of things that were in my head was a little bit. It was awesome, and at the same time, I was like, I shouldn't have written it like that because then they did weird things with it that I wasn't expecting.
I love that.
Yeah,
That's the greatest thing about opera is that it takes a lot of minds to make it to pull it off, and
yeah,
I always find that when it's done right, all those minds kind of add up, and it turns into something totally that you didn't. I'm always amazed
yeah.
when I work with directors who are visionary and come up with a
Hmm.
crazy idea, and in the
Hmm.
end, it makes something so interesting to me.
Yeah, yeah. I totally agree with that.
So you mentioned your R&B.
Yeah.
Were you singing R&B before opera, or is that something that happened at the same time?
No, that was before. I mean, I was raised in a church, um, and when I was in high school, well, middle school and high school, that was the cool thing. You know what I mean?
I
So,
think it's still the
like,
cool thing.
I mean,
Love
yeah,
R&B.
without a doubt, without a doubt. But I mean, that really drew me to it because I went from singing. I'll say it's gospel. I mean, I guess I was singing gospel as a kid, you know what I mean, and gospel songs. And then I went to Merit, and so I got into singing classical songs. Like the 24 Italian art songs and arias and book. Like Amarini, Mia Bella, and all that stuff. Caro mio ben.
I just know them well.
Yeah, and so I was singing that stuff when I was like 11, 12. But then around that same time, R&B was around me all the time. Hip hop was around me all the time. So it wasn't like it all kind of felt like the same thing to me, which was weird. In hindsight, looking back, people often create these delineations, and I never really did. It was just music for wherever I was. You know what I mean? and
That's incredibly prescient because we look at music today and we're seeing breaking down of genre lines.
hmm
A classical music has always been this way. Honestly, people it absorbs different styles, different nationalities. Like you look at
yeah,
the birth of German opera, the birth of English opera, the birth of French
right,
opera. It just includes national styles and kind of morphs. I think that's what makes
yeah,
opera interesting is that it can expand its boundaries, and Western and
yeah,
classical music keeps on expanding. I just
hmm
think it's great to see it expand to be more contemporary.
yeah, yeah, definitely. I really don't even see it as a genre per se. I mean, a genre as in style. Same thing with like musical theater, and like even just in general, I don't even like prescribe to genres now. You know what I mean? But even like when you're looking at opera, I mean, there are so many styles within opera because all the spread of its expansion is like beyond one place and one time and one locale. So you can like have operas that you absolutely love and absolutely hate. You know what I mean?
We all
And
do.
and we all do. And yeah. So, and one thing I was just thinking about too is I remember when I was sang Abduction from Seraglio a while back, and and I was listening to one of the tenor arias. I can't remember which one it was. It was the one that's normally cut. I can't remember the name of it, but it's one that's normally cut, and we did all of them in this particular production, which was taxing, and we could talk about that offline. But anyway, um, this one aria that's always cut. I was listening to it, and I was like, wow, this sounds like an Austrian shepherd on a mountaintop. You know what I mean? Like it had this folkiness to it. You know what I mean? And I even think about like when Rigoletto premiered, and like they were singing, as I've heard, they were singing La Donna Mobile in the streets like after the show. You know what I mean?
Immediately, they didn't hand out the score. I love the story. They didn't
Yeah.
hand out the score to the orchestra until the night of the show because they didn't want it
Right.
stolen by the gondoliers in time.
Yeah. 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 I mean, that just shows how intertwined opera has been with the people for so long, and as of late, I mean, late being the last 100 years, kind of moving away from the people more, which has been kind of weird. You know what I mean? But we hopefully we can get back to bringing it to the people. You know?
Well, there's certainly more attention on being finding new voices. I think that's so important to our art
Hmm.
form.
Definitely.
So let's talk about the development of Hal King, and
Yeah.
I mean, it's kind of a reimagined Shakespeare along with opera. It sounds like a
Sure.
massive project. Tell us about the genesis of this, and how you started this process and how it got to where it is today. And you can see this staged filmed opera on all the streaming platforms. So tell us where we can see it and where we can find it first.
Yeah, definitely. Hal King, it's available on Amazon Prime. It's available on YouTube Movies, Google Play, and iTunes. And yeah, go watch it. Oh, it's on Tubi too. I don't know if anybody has Tubi. If you do, go check it out. You can watch it for free on Tubi, but you got to go through the commercials and stuff. Wait through that. But um, and also the soundtrack is available for streaming on all streaming platforms as well. So
Oh, fantastic!
yeah, yeah, you can check out some of the music before you jump in. So Hal King is an R&B opera for film. I came up, well, the seeds of the idea came from when I was an undergrad at UNLV. I had a black opera professor named Alphonse Anderson, who exposed me to the idea of what singing opera would be like for real. And then because of him, he drew a lot of other black singers to the school. And so it was like, at UNLV, which is predominantly a white institution, or non-black institution, it was maybe like seven of us black opera singers in the same program at the same time, and most of us were following him, or following each other or whatever. Like somebody was a friend of this other person or whatever. And so we would sit around a lot, and just because of our background, hip hop, R&B, soul, gospel, jazz, all that's like a part of like just who we are without even thinking about it. So a lot of times when we would sing arias and stuff, we would play around and sing them in other ways, sing it as a jazz tune, or sing it as an R&B song or whatever, or flip it around. Like I would be with some friends sometimes, and I would sing an R&B song like an opera singer, and then people just thought it was so funny or it was cool or whatever. And I think that planted the seeds for me for Hal King, because then I started thinking about, what if like a brilliant mind in R&B, like a Prince, or Babyface or something, Mike Brian McKnight, or like what if they were to sit down and write an opera? What would that really sound like? And I used to just kind of play with that in my head as an idea. And later, as I would go through, I came to New York as a writer and a producer, and like I was performing as a solo artist, as an R&B singer as well. And I worked with a ton like hip hop artists like Ghostface from Wu Tang and De La Soul, and I worked with Lettucey, who's an incredible R&B soul singer, and Eric Roberson, a bunch of other people, and local artists, and and in the midst of all of that, I kind of felt like I was trying to find what my sound would be that incorporated everything from my backgrounds. And I was always really influenced by The Wiz, the Quincy Jones produced
Oh, I
version.
love that show.
Yeah, yeah. Since I was really young, I used to listen to it like all the time when I was from the age of 3 or 4. And there were so many styles and sounds that were in that show, and the orchestration and stuff. And I didn't know what I was getting all at once, but just the idea of taking all of these things that I've experienced and gone through sonically, and putting it into one place and what that would sound like. So the real kickoff was this: I had a dream, and um, um, and so I woke up from this dream. The dream was Usher, the R&B singer, and he had on a Shakespearean poet shirt and jeans and Timberlands on. And he was running through a battlefield. And I was like, I woke up and I was like, oh my gosh, what does that mean? And then I immediately knew what it meant. I was like, I got to do this thing. So I started to pull people together to create a team to start writing Hal King. So that was the
I love that Usher in a Timberlands running across a battlefield. That's fascinating. And boy, the original. So tell us, opera has got some, the differences obviously in R&B and opera. There's just a few. I mean, the
yeah.
singing style, the kind of the way you set up the libretto. Did you write the libretto?
I did not. No.
Okay.
I just I conceptualize it in what I wanted to happen and how I wanted to feel. But even the people that were writing the libretto didn't know they were writing a libretto. So I had a friend who was a great playwright and also had written for film because I knew I wanted to be a film, a musical experience. So I got her to write and I told her I wanted dialogue, but I wanted to sort of rhyme, but not rhymey, you know. And then I had another friend. Well, the first friend I went to was a great at adaptations for stories. So I told her I wanted something that felt classical, but also felt like black and 20th century. And so she came with this idea of taking Shakespeare's King Henry IV and Fifth and do an adaptation of that. And I told her like the sort of pillar points I wanted. I want this to happen, and I want this person to do this. And so she was like, cool. And she wrote out the storyline for me. Took it to someone else, the playwright that wrote the sort of rhymey text dialogue, and then took it to a third person who then like for specific moments, which there was an internal dialogue, which it happens in the arias for operas, is I need you to write what this person is thinking right here. And so then from all that, I just mashed it all up into a document. I started editing things out, keeping this, taking that, whatever. And then I started writing all the music to it.
So the libretto had to come first. Is that what I'm hearing? Did you have musical sketches first before the libretto, or is it the libretto first and then the music came after?
Typically with opera, as opposed to musical theater, I think, I mean, uh, in general, text first, because it kind of allows for the setting to be a certain way so it doesn't get too sing-songy. And I think the sing-songiness is great in musical theater because of how catchy it needs to be for its the demographic is reaching. That's just this is my approach to it. So for the most part, I went text first. What I did do with Hal King, because I also wanted to continue the case for it being an opera, was I wrote motifs and I just stacked up a bunch of motifs that meant different things and represented different ideas. And
A little bit of
so
Wagnerian influence in your. I love
yeah,
it.
yeah, definitely. Wagnerian. I mean, I even if you look on the How King website, I talk about the Gesamtkunstwerk all the time. Even like the ideas. It went back earlier in
For the
dramatic.
audience who may not know what
Oh, sorry about
Gesamtkunstwerk
that.
are, now certainly we do. It's the complete artwork. That was a Wagnerian term, and Wagner to me is one of the most interesting characters because
Mm.
he. Think about this: you had a composer whose music can only an opera house built for only his music to be performed. Who else could do that?
Not many people. I mean, yeah, that's a conversation within itself. We can go back into his history. It's like his whole story is like fascinating.
Crazy
Um,
man, a
yeah,
fascinating artist.
yeah,
Back
but
to
yeah,
Hal King.
So I wanted to use these motifs the way even like looking at Schoenberg or like Bach, like how doing like inversions and retrogrades and all of this stuff. I didn't use any 12 tone rows for Hal King.
Your
Um,
audience probably is going to appreciate that.
well, I mean, here's the thing though, is that in another opera I wrote that which premiered in Chicago in November, it was called Undying Love. Actually, I actually did use a 12 tone roll in that one. Yeah, but I used it in the places where it needs that sound. You know what I'm saying? So when the character was confused or when like there was real lot of stress happening, that's when it was happening. It wasn't throughout. It was like,
You
Of
know what?
polystylism
I
thing.
kid around. The expressionistic school, the expressionism can be really a powerful tool. I tell
Yeah,
my students,
definitely.
I teach undergraduates a survey course, and I'm always amazed. Like, you know, these styles. Like, if you've ever seen a horror movie, that's when they
Yeah,
bring out the expressionistic music, and it
yeah.
perfectly fits the scene when it's used correctly. And some of the
Hmm.
composers writing 12 tone can modify the tone rose to be more quasi tonal and not as dissonant.
Yeah, I actually wrote a part in the Undying Love at the end. So it opens with this 12 tone roll, I just like lay out the whole roll, and then I just go through the opera, and periodically it pops up in different ways and inside the orchestral texture and stuff and inner voices. At the end is like this culmination of that roll, but I harmonize it tonally. So the melody melodic line is 12 tone, but the harmony is like very consonant, which is
I
anyway.
love
That
it.
was really
I
really
love
good.
this combination of musical kind of a sort of a musical aesthetic from the masters of the past, along with something brand new and modern. And
Yeah.
tell me, in terms of vocal style,
Mhm.
obviously gospel R&B is can be quite improvisatory. People are a lot of
Sure.
improvisation. It's probably a little bit different when you're doing an opera and it has to be written down and orchestrated. How did you accomplish that feeling in your composition?
Well, I wanted everything to kind of have the feel of both, you know. And
Cool.
then throughout the history of classical music, like I'm actually preparing for an audition for La Commenzo di Tito, and I was reading something about Mozart and with like ornamentation and stuff, and like how much was allowed and wasn't and stuff like that. And it's actually like a lot more than people think today. You know what I mean? And a lot of things more that people were expecting, especially considering the period like right before the Baroque era. It was, if you go back and do the same material again and didn't do anything new with it, like you might get booed. You know what I mean? So I think improvisation is kind of in the heart of any creative artist, any musician, or they want to break out and not be locked into doing things exactly like this. And even in like in Puccini, that we were talking about this offline, but because it's so much stretch and push and pull, but everyone does their push and pull differently. Everyone does their glissandros a little bit different. You know what I mean? And that's the spirit of the creative. But with Hal King, um, what I wanted to have as far as like the improvisatory elements, I just allow for the singers to be themselves. I let the notes be the notes. I said, okay, this is how it goes, and but I wanted them to put themselves into it, not feel so locked into the way I specifically did it. And the other thing was about it is the way I wrote it is more like how hip hop and R&B is written. So I would lay down tracks, but I would write the tracks in my mind or on the keyboard the way a classical line would be written. You know what I'm saying? And I knew like harmonically where I was going. So like a jazz chart, I like jazz charts for like the whole thing, and I'd have maybe some of the melodies, definitely the motifs were written out. But I was incorporating like these types of things within the context of sort of improvising them in a way like how Coltrane or Dave or Miles Davis would. You know what I mean? So they have their motifs or their opening statements of the music, but while they're improvising, they would add, oh, this is a demonization of that, or this is augmentation of that, within while they were uh, composing on the spot.
Wow. So you really were able, yeah, you were able to get both of those elements and fuse them in a totally unique and organic way.
Yeah, I really wanted to do that. That was what I tried to set out to do from the beginning.
Sometimes you get people who like want to include elements of a certain style, but don't really know the style as well as you need to make it work organically. You know what I mean? It's like a
Yeah, yeah,
veneer
yeah.
of gospel and on a
Right.
classical
Yeah.
piece, and that to me is always kind of like shallow. It doesn't have the what makes
Exactly.
the art form great in its first place.
Yeah, exactly. And that's a problem just in general. I mean, when we're talking about like appropriation of cultures and things like that, and like sometimes when I go to some shows and I hear like gospel music is thrown in or something, or jazz or something, and I'm like, these people don't really know it. They just kind of like a vibe. And I was in a writer's workshop, and somebody was incorporating some hip hop and what they were doing it just because it was a party scene, and they were like, now let's do the hip hop thing. And then I was like, yeah, you can't really approach it like that. So like that's why what's I think was one of the things that's really different about me is that I I've studied like both, like deep. Like I've gone deep with Mozart, Puccini, and Verdi. I've gone deep with Rakim and with Tribe Called Quest and with the Roots. I've gone deep with Stevie Wonder and Donny Hathaway, and so I know those things. Like some of this stuff it was around me growing up. I was raised in church and black music was around me, But same thing when it was with classical music. When I got into it, like I was like, man, I want to learn how to speak Italian. Man, I want to go to Italy. So I started to be just kind of ensconcing myself within the ideas and the feelings and the understandings of it, in a different way, learning the history of it and just really respecting and honoring it, just like I did my own culture in many ways. So
That's amazing and
yeah,
incredibly admirable. So putting this together now, and you've written this music, you've
yeah.
developed this libretto, and it must have taken a long time to start before the casting even got done. Did you do the casting?
The casting was with me, also with a good friend of mine, Monet Dunham, did the casting, and Lillian Piles was someone local on site where we shot in Ohio, who helped with casting, more like extras and those type of people. But all the principals were either friends of mine that I met like in R&B and soul music world, or like musical that also kind of would cross over to musical theater, did some musical theater pieces too, or in gospel, and people that Monet knew as well. So she would just shoot me, people's information, and it's like, what do you think about this person? And, so yeah, we did that together.
Were the roles tailored, written for their voices, or were they written in
No, no, not
advance?
at all. No, I wrote everything in advance. I did all the reference tracks too. So when I was writing, like I said, I was writing more like an R&B writer. So I would just I was just taking the text and I was looking at it, and I would just work out the melody on the keyboard or just kind of sing through it, and I would just lay it down, on record it. And so people, when they would hear the references, it was like I was singing all the parts, the ladies' parts too, the treble parts and stuff.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
And the rehearsal process and the
Yeah.
filming process. Did you know the director in advance? Was there someone new you worked with? I mean,
Oh
you're
yeah, the
talking about a
director.
film. It's such a massive project.
Yeah, yeah, it is. What that's a problem with, not a problem. I'm just saying in quotation marks. A problem with me sometimes is I just have these ideas, and they're like just these big ideas, and then I have to like see them through. Um, but yeah, so it was a blessing. My I had a band, and I was singing locally. I performed at one, like all the venues in New York City, and like the Apollo Theater and like Blue Note. I used to play the Blue Note like all the time, and so I had a band, and I had released about, like, I don't know, at that time maybe about 5 albums or something independently, and my drummer in my band, his cousin was an R&B singer as well back in the 90s. He put a couple of albums out then, and a couple of hit songs written for like True Hill and Maya and the Isley Brothers and stuff. And then he transitioned. His name was Myron Davis, and he had transitioned from, well, he still was doing like R&B and soul and stuff, and became a music director at a church, and he got into making films, and he started with a short film that went really well for him, and he really enjoyed it, and he decided he was going to do a full length, called One Last Prayer, as a Christian film, called One Last Prayer. And then right after that, I think it was a little bit after we worked together actually. Um, and I don't know what's going on, but he just reached out to me, and we were just chatting, my drummer friend, and he was like, yeah, I helped him like co-produce this film, and we're looking for a new project to work on. And I had just finished writing Hal King, and I was like, well, I got this film, musical R&B opera thing I want to do, and he's an R&B singer. How about that? And so they were like, cool. So sent it to him. He thought it was a dope idea. We sat down together, and he was like, man, this is cool. I really like this. And we just kept building from there. So yeah, shout out to Myron Davis. And it was really a blessing too, the fact that he was an R&B singer and a songwriter, and he understood music. He plays multiple instruments himself, and so that was great to have that, on the set.
Well, it's huge. I mean, you're
Mm.
talking about this. I've been a lot of part of a lot of live events, but putting it on film takes so long with the shooting and the reshooting. Where did you use for location?
So, so this was a half. So we did half of the film in Ohio, because we had a grant opportunity in Ohio, which we actually weren't able to um, take advantage of because there was some money constraints and issues and stuff halfway through filming, and then we had to shift
Money
everything to the
constraints in 2020, never.
yeah. Well, this
In
was
the
like,
arts,
well, in the arts in general, it's always a thing, right? But this was a little
always.
this was before 2020. So in so so halfway through, we got to a point where we were like, I don't know if we could finish this, and then my wife stepped in. My wife was helping out in the first half, like kind of managing the craft services and stuff like that, and hospitality, and then the second half, she just took over as the manager for like the whole film, and she planned out like how we could do this for like way less than we did the first half and do it in New York. And we pulled a bunch of favors and stuff. And so for a lot of the shots were done at a church I used to be a musical director at. And we just found places. A few of the scenes were done at my apartment, So those types of things started happening. But yeah, it was a variety of different spaces. One of the space for Madam Quickly's nightclub was actually our production designer's apartment, and so he just like moved everything, and like we just set up because he had this really cool like loft apartment. So it was stuff like that we did. Another space, some things were like built. So like the tent in the Korean War where they're singing together the Memphis Shack song, that was actually a built set. And the Paris flashback scene was also a built set. So it was a variety of things we just did. We had to do to get it done. You
And
know.
what was it like to watch it come together and finally watch it make its premiere? Tell us what it's like. What it's like. The reception's been. I mean,
Yeah.
you put so much work. You'll be 10 years into a project. What's it like to watch it come together?
Yeah. Yeah. It's like birthing a child, sort of. I mean, not that I know what that's
Yeah, I have
really
four, and
like,
I understand it takes.
but
It's a lot of work and a lot of time and
yeah,
years of
yeah.
conception.
And then one time, once the project is out, it's not, you think it'll be like, it's finally out, great. It's like, okay, now you got to get on the grind, and there's more work to do, and you got to keep raising this child. You know what I mean? So uh, yeah, it's been awesome though. Like the response, like from some just tons of people that I didn't know or were not connected with, has been so positive. People from so many different walks of life, like because my background being in like R&B music and in classical music and stuff, like people from both of those worlds have been very responsive and very appreciative of what's been happening. Like I got some gigs. Eki Isamura from Opera in the Heights called me like halfway through watching it, and he's like, this is awesome, but I got to finish watching it, and my kids are screaming. I'll call you back, and and then he like sent me a message. He was like, I want to ask you to write this other project for me, after seeing Hal King. So things like that were happening. Um, and just to have people like yourself, like people that are in the classical realm, like to recognize it and see it for its opera-ness, you know what I'm saying? Is But then also people that don't go to operas, don't like opera, don't like musical theater, and they're like telling me people's lines and singing songs, you know what I mean?
That's
And so
awesome.
yeah, yeah. So there's something really special about the project, because of that. And one of the the goals I had for it was that it would bridge that gap between like the the collegiate world of music, the artsy world, whatever, and like the everyday folks that just want to enjoy a good song, or and be able to have us all like sit together and like be able to experience these feelings together in the same place.
Oh, wow, fantastic.
Yeah.
And are there any plans to bring this to life on the stage in a live performance?
Yeah, so there's nothing solidified right now. I do have a stage adaptation that I have been working on, um, and it's sitting on my hard drive. So I have a version that's written that's for the stage, but I'm not gonna go too deep into that until I get like the right funding, right scenario, the right supporters and stuff. It's definitely something I would love to do. I think it would definitely work really well on the stage. And so definitely open to it. I hope that would happen. Yeah.
Well, putting it out there into the cyber world that
Yeah.
these things happen, because we're seeing such interesting new voices in the opera world primarily. Terence
Hmm.
Blanchard's "Fire Shut Up in My Bones" that was really
Definitely.
fantastic and very
Yeah.
different. I mean, the use of the orchestration and there's such a film score quality to that score. I really enjoyed.
Definitely. Hmm.
But I think that it's wonderful to see the new voices who are adding to the opera repertoire, and I think that it's time to bring that in.
Without a doubt. Without a doubt.
Well, I appreciate you talking to us today. What other projects are you working on now? What's on the docket for next projects?
Yeah. So let's see. Um, so I told you Undying Love that was premiered with Hearing in Color in Chicago in November of last year. I'm also working on I'm working on an adaptation of George Orwell's Animal Farm
Interesting. Good
as a
time for that.
musical. Yeah, yeah, yeah. So I started it a couple years ago through the BMI Lehman Engel Workshop for composers and lyricists. Um, and so it got a lot of really good response there. We started with like a 20-minute. I'm writing it with Daniel Abrahamson, and we just brought in a book writer, Sarah Muchek, who's writing the book. And we did a full length ish reading last year with Theater Now in New York, which went really well. So we're continuing. It's in development, and we're moving forward with that. I also am writing a a hip hop opera adaptation of The Count of Monte Cristo
Mm,
with Kenny Harmon is my librettist for that. And so I met Kenny at BMI as well. And we worked on another project. It was an adaptation of Humpty Dumpty as a 10-minute short like musical, and we made an animated version of that, which won an award at World Fest Houston. Um, and so from there, it just kind of blossomed into this project. So, and we're taking this angle, like we're doing it like from a modern perspective, considering that Alexandre Dumas was essentially a BIPOC writer. You know what I mean? And thinking about the story from perspective as of people of color, black people and black men specifically, are falsely accused, put into prison, et cetera, and what that means, um, even in that time. So
mm.
so yeah, so that's another project. And the third thing, okay, it's the first time I'm sort of announcing this. This has got an exclusive
Oh, I
for you.
love it.
You ready? So I'm
Bring it.
working on a hip hop version of um, Schumann's Dichterliebe.
Ooh, one of my
Yeah.
favorite song cycles, and
Mm,
interesting concept.
yeah. Yep. I'm gonna be. I'll just put that out there. It's gonna be with the. It's an organization called Free Song. Um, they have the a music film organization that Ellie Kakasik, if anybody knows who she is. Yes, she started this organization with some other people that she knows, and so yeah, I'm looking forward to that. That's going to be out this year by the wonderful month of May.
Perfect. In wunderschönen Monat Mai.
You got it.
Great music and great music. Can't wait to hear what the hip hop adaptation is. It's going to be beautiful.
Yeah.
Where can people go to find out more about Steve Wallace?
Yeah. The hub for Steve Wallace is stevewallacemusic.com. If you go to stevewallacemusic.com, it'll take you to whatever you kind of want to know. There's a tab for my compositions. There's a tab for my previous projects, which are most like R&B, soul, and blues-based projects, and there's a tab for my classical tenor website. I am still singing as a classical tenor as well, um, and so yeah, that's the place to go to check out what's going on with me. And then also on social media, I'm like very active, Instagram and Facebook mostly. Twitter gets a little love from time to time. Instagram does like maybe every so often. So and TikTok, But yeah, so Instagram and Facebook my main ones. Instagram, I'm Steve W Studio One, and then I'm Steve Wallace Music on Facebook, or you could just search Steve Wallace Music or something. It'll pop up.
Well, I encourage everyone to get out there and check out this really visionary artist who's putting together such great projects and interesting collaborations. And I can't wait to see what your next couple projects will be. And make sure you check out Hal King on the streaming platforms and on both audio and video. And thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah, Jason, thanks for having me. This has been a pleasure of mine to be here and to talk with you.
Hope we get to catch up in New York sometime and have a drink and catch up. And it's been a couple of years. I think we worked together in 2015 on a Bohème production, if I remember correctly.
That's right, yeah.
It's amazing how time flies, but you always remember the good artists you work with.
Oh, yeah, thank you. I enjoyed working with you as well, you know.
Well, continued success and making great music and on many fronts.
Yeah, thank you. Same to you.
Thank you for joining us on Music Matters with Jason Tramm. Please remember to like and subscribe to our channel at Jason Tramm, and like our videos and share them as it helps our community grow. Make sure you check out our website for our past 230 episodes at www.jasontram.net. Thank you very much, and remember, keep music alive.